Okay, that's okay. Fab. Well, thanks for joining us today. This is the Communications 101 webinar, and we're going to be looking at branding, publicity, and recruitment for local groups. My name's Lauren Penny, and I'm the communications manager at Woodcraft. Okay, so a little bit more of a breakdown about what we're going to be covering today. So we're going to be looking at what branding is and what support we've got available at head office and guidance around that. Um, we're also going to be looking at how groups can secure press and social media to help promote their groups. We're going to be looking at social media marketing and how that you can use that to recruit young members, volunteers, and promote your group. I'll also be discussing a range of resources that we've got at head office that we've created and services that we can offer you to help with publicity. We're going to specifically look at recruitment and what support we can offer you there. And there'll be a chance for a few questions at the end. So, why is it important to invest in comms? Just kind of looking at the wider picture here. I don't know how many of those here have kind of got a social media profile for their group or kind of put posters up, but comms covers a wide range of different travel channels that you can do to publicize your group. So, first and foremost, which is quite an obvious one, is to just increase brand awareness of Woodcraft folk and understanding of what we're about through the messaging and content that you share on a local level. It's also to increase engagement, both with your local group and with the National Woodcraft Folk organisation as well. It's to trigger an action that might be someone donating to a fundraiser that you're doing. It might be that you want someone to sign up to your group, whether it's a volunteer or a young member. And it can create warm leads for other things as well. And also to improve communication into a form from little things such as whether your group night has had to kind of be cancelled at a certain week because I don't know, snow or weather conditions, to bigger communication such as big campaigns that we're running. For example, this year it's Woodcraft Centenary anniversary, and importantly to add value and build a connection with audience both on a local level and channeling them towards what we can offer nationally as well. So quite a lot comes together to deliver successful communications. Some things are, what you'd kind of expect, and some things maybe are things that you might not have considered before. So successful communication can cover things such as, is it relevant what you're putting out to the intended audience? That's in terms of like the messaging that you use, the imagery that you use, that can kind of cover a wide range of things. And these things on here are just kind of almost like little triggers to get you talking, and some parts of them we'll discuss during the webinar today. But it's just kind of to getting you think a bit more about it. It's more than just kind of putting a social media post out or a poster. There's quite a lot of theory and thinking that we kind of need to put behind the content that we're sending out. So another thing is like, are you using an appropriate channel? So we all know that Instagram and TikTok are really good at kind of attracting maybe younger audience, such as 13 plus, that you want to kind of tell about your group and maybe get signups for. Whereas Facebook's really good for kind of volunteers, if you're maybe trying to recruit volunteers, and also the frequency. So algorithms on social media really kind of push posts to audiences that are consistent. So you kind of post on a similar day and time of week, that you're also frequent as well. So you're posting a couple of times a week. We kind of advise that you would post 2 or 3 times a week if possible. And also timely. So, for example, a lot of the apps that you use now, like social media apps, they'll tell you in the back end, like it's quite easily accessible information, like what time your audience are most active on your channels and which is the best time to post. And also, successful communications are up to date. So you want to make sure that what you're putting out is kind of useful and it's, timely. And one thing that you can do is schedule in posts, but which can kind of help in terms of time as well if you don't have much time. But it's also really important to make sure if you're scheduling that whatever content you kind of maybe scheduled in a few weeks back, it's good to kind of keep checking in and make sure that that's still relevant and up to date. And also using the right tone of voice. I'll be speaking a bit more later about branding, but Woodcraft have a brand guidelines document, and that kind of outlines what tone of voice we should be using when talking to kind of volunteers and young members. Generally, as an organization, we're very approachable, we're friendly, we welcome everyone. We kind of quite informative, but we have a lot of important things to deliver as well. And we're very diverse as well. And so it's very important to think about what the tone of voice that you're putting out is. And it must fill a purpose. So there's no point just putting communications out for the sake of it. I mentioned putting 2 or 3 posts out a week, but they have to have a reason behind them. Are you trying to attract new volunteers? Are you just informing people of something important, an event that's coming up? Really think about why you're sending the communications out that you are and what the point is of them, because equally you can actually post too much, and if people aren't engaging or reacting with that or looking at it, the actual algorithm on social media platforms will actually stop pushing your content out to people that they think it's appropriate to. And as I've mentioned it all, it's engaging. Use a mixture of content to kind of keep things fresh and interesting, and really showcase what your group is like on a local level and what is your unique selling point, not only just maybe against other youth groups in the area. That could be, you know, like scouts or whatever, but also kind of sports groups that are meeting up. Think what really sets you apart. And you can always connect it to kind of, you know, important trends and themes that are kind of going on in real life as well. And kind of the final one is to kind of really make things concise and clear. Don't post like really lengthy kind of posts or anything like that. Just be really succinct and clear in your messaging. And it's worth stating that all this is important, as I said, to get successful communications across for any brand. But I think in terms of our competitors, Woodcraft is maybe not as well known as some of the other groups in the youth sector. So it's really important that what we are putting out is kind of clear, concise, and it really gets across what Woodcraft is about and what we can offer, both on a local level and on a national level. So that's a little bit about just to encourage you to think about what you're putting out and kind of maybe start thinking about a bit of a theory behind it as well. So not just putting stuff out for the sake of it. And we'll touch a bit more on those points as we kind of go through this presentation today. So the big thing that we were going to look at, or one of the big things, is branding. Now, what does kind of branding cover? A lot of people, when they think of branding, think of a logo, but branding's a lot more than that. And it's actually the process of creating kind of an identity for a business or an organization. And it's to put that in the mind of the target audience and consumers so that they actually understand what you're about. You can almost think of a brand identity as like the essence of a brand, or it's like the DNA of the brand. It's like giving a business kind of like a personality. And I mentioned it does cover logo, but it also covers things such as color palette, the fonts that you use, the tone of voice, like the way that we speak to people, and the images that we use as well, and much more than that. And I'll kind of be breaking some of the more higher overarching elements and strands to branding in this presentation. And it's crucial because maybe we're not well known as kind of other organisations as our competitors, to actually be consistent with our branding, to portray like a really strong brand identity. So to increase our awareness, but also our positioning against our competitors, it's important that people understand what Woodcraft folk stand for and what we're about and how that differentiates us from other youth groups in the sector, but also to create an understanding of what we can offer and how people can interact with us. And I've put a little note at the brand there to check out our brand guidelines, and I'll say a bit later about how you can access them. But it's quite an interesting read, and it covers a lot of what's in this presentation in terms of branding, but it kind of goes into a bit more detail as well. And a brand guidelines document is basically a document that you could hand to anyone and they'd be able to read it and fully understand what your brand is about, kind of how they portray their brand, how they portray your brand, such as like a logo that they use or a color palette to represent it. So it's a really important document that I encourage kind of really anyone who is a communicator for Woodcraft. And that doesn't mean that you're just putting social media posts or anything. Anyone who interacts or represents Woodcraft is an actual brand ambassador for Woodcraft. So we all need to be thinking about how we speak to people, how we put a poster together, how we write a social media post, all that comes together and is under the heading of kind of branding and communication. So one of the first elements, it's quite easy that we can all kind of make sure that we're using to be consistent in our branding is to look at the typography or rather font that we're using. So Woodcraft Folk encourages use of two core fonts for our branding. One is called Montserrat, and the other one is called Poppins Bold, and these are usually readily available fonts. You can get them on the Google Drive, which I know a lot of us use to kind of create communications. You can get them in things like Canva, which is a design software, which I know a lot of us use. So they're really readily available. Now, Montserrat we use primarily for kind of body copy. Within printed materials and digital, such as presentations and documentations. And you can use that in a bold way as well to emphasize points. And we say that the minimum size that you really should use is kind of 10 to 11 to kind of make sure that it's readable. Many fonts are represent and appear very differently at different sizes. So just because one font appears quite readable at size 10 doesn't mean another one does. So that's something to bear in mind. So we advise size 10, 11 for Montserrat. And then Poppins Bold we're mainly used for kind of titles and subheadings in both traditional printed media and digital media. And ideally, we suggest kind of a minimum of a 12 point for this and a 14 point kind of that you can use for headings as well. And subheadings is the 12 point. So that's the fonts that we're encouraging you to use. Now, in terms of color palette, our color palette is quite bright, it's bold, it's useful, and it's engaging. And some of the colors here link to the outdoors because I know we've got a big focus with the outdoors as well. Now, the colors work individually, but they can also work well together. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can put all colors on top of each other and they still work. So still think very carefully about kind of which colors that you put together and make sure that they're very clear and easy to read. For example, if you're using one as a color background or something. Now, you might recognize that the three left-hand colors actually form the core Woodcraft Folk color logo. But these colors can kind of be used as background colors. They can be used to create like a text box or a call out box. But we've got the codes on here that you can kind of use to make sure that you can match the exact colors. And usually any software that you're using, if you go to change a font or select a color, it will usually give you an option on there to select like more colors or advanced colors. And when you click on that, there'll be a little box. And within that, you can see it next to it. You can see a hashtag. And if you put any of the hashtag numbers that are in there next to each color, that will actually give you the exact color of the Woodcraft, one of the Woodcraft color palettes that you're using on here. And it's worth mentioning that we have an account on Canva, which is a design online software that our volunteers can use. And within that, we've actually set publicity materials up there and templates that actually have the font readily set up on there, all our fonts and also our color palettes ready to use. And I'll go into a bit more detail about that later, how you can use that and how that's accessible to you. Okay, so now we're going to look at Woodcraft Folk's logo. Now, you might be aware, as I mentioned earlier, that Woodcraft Folk is turning 100 this year, and our logo hasn't actually changed that much over the years. It might have been kind of smartened and tidying up a bit just to kind of bring it into the more of the modern day. But we actually have three variations of the Woodcraft Folk logo, and this mainly kind of surrounds itself around color. So we've obviously got our color logo, we have a black and white logo, and we have an outline logo. Now, these logos are available to download on the shared Google Drive, and we've got a web page which kind of summarizes all our logos and color palette info with loads of links to download things like our logos and like publicity material templates on our website. And I can share those around at the end of the session, what that web page looks like. And we kind of have a range of sizes for the logos that you can download, as well as them as like JPEGs or PDFs if you wanted to get some printed big for any reason. And we also have them like transparent, so you can overlay them on colored backgrounds and things like that. And we basically just say there's no right or wrong rule with kind of which logo you use. We basically just say use the one that gives the best clarity of the logo. And if you're in doubt which one to use, please kind of ask me. There's a few there's a few different varieties of or variations of the three different main logos that I said previously. So we have options where they actually bring in our strapline strip and name. You can see the ones here are just kind of almost the motifs on their own. But we do have variations that bring the Woodcraft name in and our strapline strip as well. And we basically say if the communication that you're using and that you're putting your logo on, whether it's a flyer or a letter to an MP or anything like that, we say that you use you use the logo with the strapline on if it's an audience that might not know who we are, or that you're just kind of starting off speaking to and building a relationship with. That just because it kind of backs up and just says who Woodcraft folk are. And basically, as I mentioned, just use the variation of the logo that makes it stand out the clearest and most prominent, as well as taking into the account the kind of communication type that you're using. If it's like, I don't know, memorabilia that you're trying to create and it's sort of for something quite small, like if you're going to use the logo with the strapline strip on it, you might find out by the time that you reduced it down, you can't read the strapline. So just think about kind of how easy the text is to read, especially if you're using obviously the strapline version. And we also argue that whatever communication you're using, whether it's a report or anything like that, that the logo really needs to appear at least once in that communication, just for Woodcraft folk to take ownership and people to know what the communication is, who's that coming from, and who owns it. Okay, so there's a few do's and don'ts with the logo. One is that we ask that you don't change the positioning of the logo or rearrange it, that you don't reformat the logo or distort it, kind of squashing up or stretch it, that you always use uh, version of the logo that's in focus and that it's not pixelated, and that you don't change the font or the logo or the wording around the logo as well, nor add an outline or any other graphic elements to the logo. And it might seem like there's quite a lot of rules around this, but it's just mainly important because we want to be consistent with how we use the logo so that people recognize it and get used to it, and it really helps build our brand awareness. So that's kind of logo, and I'm obviously happy to answer any more questions on that. I've got my email at the end, and you can get in touch with me at any time. But I hope that was kind of useful and quite clear. And now that moves us into photography. So using strong imagery kind of really builds a professional feel to the organization, and it helps bring our brand identity as well. We kind of encourage that you use in-focused images. They kind of just look professional and they're easier to kind of see. And if you're struggling for photos, you can always ask the central comms team for images. We've got a huge bank of images available for you to use. You can use some stock images, but we kind of feel like they're quite forced, and Woodcraft Folk as a brand is quite natural and organic. And we try and encourage to stay clear of kind of quite posed stage photos, which a lot of the stock photos can be. Obviously, if it's just for a standard image like of a cake or something because you're promoting a bake sale, that's fine. But when we're talking about our young people and kind of trying to recruit young people or volunteers, we find it really helps to kind of use photos from across the movement. And one thing that you can always do as well is do a call out in your local community to see if there's any volunteer photographers that would like to come along and take photos of your session. Obviously, you'll need to get consent from parents for that when dealing with young people and adults. That's another option that you can kind of do as well. But, please do ask the central comms team because we have a range of images available to be used. We also encourage that the images used are relatable and for the intended purpose. So it goes without saying, if you're trying to recruit for young people of a certain age group, use young people of a certain age group. We also say that you must only use images of people that have given consent. Obviously, where the young person's too young, it needs to be the parent and guardian consent as well. And also, if you do use images either supplied by head office or maybe a photographer in your group or whatever, make sure that you credit images as well to those who require recognition. And use a diverse range of images and, try and be inclusive and make sure that, all groups are welcome because, as I mentioned before, everyone is welcome in Woodcraft and we want to make sure that we're portraying that welcome and friendly personality as well in our communications. So that brings us into social media. So we've kind of covered quite a lot of branding there, looking at photography and logo, um, and kind of our color palette. And we're going to look at social media now and start looking at the different ways of how you can publicize your group. So why should you invest in social media? Well, it's great to increase your reach and advertising. It can improve engagement. It helps drive traffic to kind of, events that you've got on, to recruitment drives that you're doing, to even just like the national movement. And it's a really useful information sharing tool, especially if you want to give parents a head up about what's coming up at your next group night. And what it doesn't just have to be like a page like on social media. It could be something like a group, like a WhatsApp group or something like that. And it's great for feedback as well. If you want to ask like parents for feedback, for example, WhatsApp groups are great for things like that. And it builds a sense of community, and you find that a lot of people within your group might kind of start talking to each other. And it's just a really good opportunity to create a network as well, and also kind of get your name out there against other businesses and communities in the local area. And if you've not got a social media presence now, I do really encourage you to have one, even if it's just to try it on one, social media platform. Just kind of see how you go, and give it a go. And it's, a really good opportunity maybe to open the floor to a younger group in Woodcraft folk, and see if they want to help you run the account. They need to be age 13 plus, and also maybe open it to them and see if they've got any ideas of kind of, what to put out on social media or anything like that. It's a really good opportunity to speak about internet and social media platform safety, as well as kind of making them feel involved in how you kind of recruit new members and new friends for kind of the young people. So, in terms of useful tips for social media, I mentioned it earlier, but posting consistently is really important. That's not to say you have to have a post out each day, usually 2 or 3 a week, but it favors the algorithm if you're kind of posting a few times a week, and ideally at a similar time or day. Less active accounts tend to be put down the pecking order by the algorithms on accounts and tend to not get seen that much when you do get around to posting. I mentioned it earlier, but as well, but also try and make use of scheduling features. All of the platforms have got it. Instagram has one, Facebook, or rather Meta has one. And if you want to kind of bring all them together, you can use platforms like Hootsuite, where you can actually schedule for a range of different platforms in one place. But it really saves time in the long run, and it helps with managing outputs. You can schedule all the posts for a particular week on one day of the week if you just find that you've got a few minutes rather than having to log in each time and kind of schedule something. Or it just really helps take the pressure off you having to kind of do it every time you want a post to go out. But as I mentioned earlier, just take a second or a bit of time each week if you've bulk like scheduled in posts, just to make sure that they're still relevant and up to date. Another kind of useful tip is that I encourage using a mix of content. Like video is king, that tends to do really well, but obviously that requires quite a bit of time and effort to kind of create videos or animations. So images are fine. Don't be afraid to use things like stories and things like that to kind of keep it engaging and just make content interesting. Use a different, way of mixing content and, ask people questions, post polls, as well as just doing, information post as well, and make it relevant and topical as well. Don't be afraid to kind of mix it up, but also obviously make sure that it's always in line with Woodcraft folks' tone of voice. And there is a platform, as I mentioned, called canva.com, which is a really useful online design software that has a load of templates and stuff for social media, and it actually has like animated videos and stuff which you are just templates that you can drop text and things in. And we've got some Woodcraft branded templates on Canva, but you can also, there's a range of access, a range of templates that are already put on Canva, its platform, as itself, that you can kind of use. And another important point is to capitalize on trends and talking points, but obviously make sure that it's relevant to Woodcraft. There's no just point hopping onto a trend for the sake of it, but try and tap into things. And that doesn't mean that, take heed of the biggest TikTok dance that's going on at the moment. It just could be like whatever event that's going on, whether it's like World Wildlife Day or something like that. If it's relevant to Woodcraft folk and you can think of a way to tie it in to, I don't know, your Woodcraft folk local group activities or anything like that, or for example, like volunteering week and you want to recruit volunteers, then definitely try and capitalize on trends and talking points. But as I mentioned, make sure that there's a clear link between the trend that you're doing and content. And as I mentioned, occasion days are a really good place to start. Other useful tips are tagging. So make sure to kind of tag other accounts or community groups in the area, whether that's if you're kind of doing, I don't know, a partnership night with, I don't know, a local wildlife group or something like that, or they're coming to give a talk. Make sure to tag each other, and you can plan that in advance as well. And it just means that it's a bigger reach. Like your post will not only get seen by the person's account who you do the tag with, but they'll also see your stuff as well. So that's kind of really handy. Also, as I mentioned, try and use really high quality images and videos. Now, as well as using your own images and videos, I mentioned at head office have a library of images that are available for our groups to use. But there's also actually, if it comes to it and you do need to use it, or we don't have what you need, or you don't have what you need, there's actually some online sites called Pixabay. Adobe stock images have like a free section on there, and Unsplash, and they all have free like stock image content that are available to use as well for you to download, and that's really handy content as well. And I mentioned it earlier, but try and use like interaction on your posts. It's not just about you sending content out, it's also about people kind of interacting with posts as well. So you can use things like quizzes, polls, set challenges, and story features are really good at doing that as well. And try and post at opportune times. I mentioned that. If you log into the back end once you've got a social media account set up, it does tend to tell you like when your audience are most active, and try and schedule posts in for that time and have them going out at that time that it suggests that your audience are most online, because it'll get seen by your audience more often than not than if you kind of do it at a time when they're not active. Um, and think about your audience. I mentioned this earlier, but what platforms do they use? If you're trying to reach out and recruit kind of a bit of an older, younger audience, like 16 plus, like Instagram, TikTok, if you're feeling brave, are kind of platforms that are good to use. And, maybe to reach out to volunteers, you use things like Facebook, local groups, and things like that. And one thing that I always encourage groups to do is to share your content with national as well, comms team, because as you'll see later, we've got a really big following with which we can share your information and give it a bigger reach. And we can also help you set up like paid adverts as well to kind of have more reach, and we can even set them up on the national accounts for you as well. That brings us to press and social media, so securing that to help promote your group. So a lot of our groups can kind of feel a bit hesitant about press, and it can kind of feel a bit of an unknown beast if you've kind of not done it before, but it's actually quite straightforward. So when I'm talking about press, I don't just mean kind of newspaper, I mean things like radio, TV, and print are a great way to get news stories out. And when I'm talking about using social media and press, you don't just need to use it to when you're kind of maybe looking for recruitment, but it's also just to share news, about what your group are up to, whether it's, I don't know, they've attended a local protest for, I don't know, water pollution or something like that, or you've had a really interesting theme night around a topical issue that's in the news. Don't be afraid to kind of share this on social media or, with the press. So securing press, many press outlets receive quite a lot of requests for a given day. And I think that's where we need to be very clever and thoughtful with what we're sending our press. So to sell a story, we need to kind of sell it with intrigue and excitement and be making it relevant and as if the outlet's readers are going to be engaged in it. So it's either that you need to push it, it's relevant to the local area, that there's a way for local people to get involved in it, that it's a topical issue. So you need to kind of have a hook about why your story or opportunity is of interest for the local press's readers and viewers. And that will help you break through the noise and secure that interest of the requests, many given requests that they get a day. And also, because outlets are so busy, the most organized you can send your press information to them, the better, and with in a most advanced of when something's happening as well. So, first of all, how you find press outlets. So, to secure press, you can contact local press outlets such as, newspapers or online news websites, kind of social media news pages, radio stations. You can kind of search for them via like Google and social media. Just put a quick search in of like your area. You can ask friends or family if they're aware of any. You can check your local TV guide to see what the local TV station is. And can even just as simply when you're nexting your local news agents or something, see what newspapers are in there or like local magazines. And if you feel like your story is quite big and it's got like a regional or even a national angle to it, please don't be afraid to reach out to me and I'll quite happily help you secure kind of regional and national press and we can work together to do that. We've had many groups that have had stories, for example, our Bristol district group had a lot of their stock stolen, and we helped them do some story around that. And we managed to help them get their £5,000 fundraiser to kind of so they could buy a lot of their camping equipment and stuff that was stolen. So there's many different reasons why we can contact press, and I'm here to help. I just need to know what your story is or what your ask is in order to help you. So in terms of how you found the press, how do you kind of send your story across? So most of them, when you look on their website or like look them up in newspaper or whatever, have an email address for you to contact. And a phone number. I usually suggest that you ring because they get so many emails a day. You can break through the noise by just picking up the phone to the news desk and just explaining your story and say that you'd love to send over more about it and you feel like it would be really interesting. And that just really helps you break through the noise and it can help you build a bit of a relationship with the reporters and the news desk as well. Now, if you want to send out a bit of press to printed material, such as like a newspaper or a magazine or an online news site, they'll usually want it sent over like a press release, and we have templates for that. And you should write that in the third person. And when sending a press release, it's really important to kind of either write a cover email along with that, or to at least pick up the phone and tell the news desk what you're sending over and just give a bit more information about that. And also, when you're sending it over via an email, I also suggest that you attach some photos, or if you're going to ring and say that you're sending a press release over, say that you've got photos available. And central team, as I mentioned, have templates that you can use to write a press release. Now, radio and TV usually just want a key summary of headline points for whatever your story is. And again, you can just drop that in a cover email. But I advise again for you to pick up the phone if there's a number available and to just ring and explain that you're sending over a news story and what the key points are, and that you really feel like this would be of interest to them and that you'd love to either have them come round and take some photos. Obviously, you'd need consent from children to do this and adults, or that you'd happily send a press release to them after the event, and that you're just warning them that this is kind of coming up. And don't be afraid to follow up your initial contact. Even me, I'll send a story out even to like a local paper that we've built up repertoire with, and they're so busy that I will still have to kind of chase them up in a few days and just say, hey, don't forget about this great story that we've got coming up. And usually it's on the second ask that you kind of might start to get a bit of a reaction from the press. So don't be feel a bit deflated if you haven't got in touch with you straight away. Definitely follow up after a few days. And I always say that those who break through the noise and are persistent will definitely get their stories more often heard than those that kind of just send one little email out about it. Other tips are use attention grabbing email headings and subject headers when you're sending your stories over to press. Make sure, if possible, that you have interviewees lined up when you submit a story, obviously that they've given consent to do that. It's just a more attractive offering if a news outlet knows that they've got people that are happy to be interviewed. And that can be young people, but again, you need the parents' consent of the children who are doing that. And make sure that you send really clear, high quality imagery. Just think this has to go out in the press, so it needs to look quite professional. Again, you need consent for those images. And keep reminding the media of the key story and action that you're trying to get out of the story, because they can get sidetracked and try and steer the story themselves, especially with TV and radio coverage. So it's really important that kind of, if you're being interviewed or if they're asking you what the key story is that you're really trying to get through, the key takeaways from that, whether it's you want people to sign up to a campaign that you're running, to donate to a fundraiser, just make sure that you've got 5 or 6 clear points that you're trying to get people to take away from the story. And consistently send stories to local press. As they say, it's new. Just any news is kind of good news. Just keep sharing it, and it might get picked up. And don't be put off if something doesn't get picked up. Just like I say, there's a range of stories going on at a given time, and you've got a lot that you're up against, but eventually you will get a story picked up and you'll start to build a relationship with the press, and you'll find sometimes that more often than not that they actually start coming to you and are like, we've got I don't know, environmental big story in the press at the moment. Do you have a local anchor? Is your group doing like an activity night around it or anything like that? And really importantly as well is to respond quickly to press if they get back to you, and share like reliable contact information that they can reach out on. Because as you probably are aware, like press stories and news and comms is very like timely, and the sooner and reactive that you can kind of be with them, they find that really helpful as well. And as I mentioned, please share your news stories with National. This isn't just kind of press, but in terms of social media, we have a combined following of 12.6 followers. So, anything that you share will be going out to that amount of people. Even if it's a volunteer that you need on a local level, share it with us. There might be someone that's following us that actually lives in your area or used to like volunteer and might want to start doing it again. And we also have 2 really handy Facebook groups that we encourage volunteers to be a part of. One's called Around the Campfire and one's called Woodcraft Folk Members and Supporters. And I think one of them's got something like 5K followers in it. But Around the Campfire is predominantly aimed at volunteers at a local group, and it's a space where You can do a call out for kind of volunteers, but it's also a great space to kind of share ideas for kind of group activities and things like that. And National share a lot of content in there that you can kind of then use to share on kind of, your local channels. We also send regular e-newsletters out. So we've got a non-member or supporter one that goes out to anyone who's either not volunteering or a young member at a local group. And we've got about four or maybe 500 subscribers to that now. And we've also got a newsletter that goes out to all volunteers across the organisation. And that's 2,000 subscribers we've got to that. So combined, that's quite a lot. And also, it can be really handy if you're running something like a fundraiser. We've got a really large amount of people that we can help spread your news around to, or even if you want to do a call out because I don't know, there's some equipment that you're missing or anything like that, don't be afraid to reach out to me and I'll help you get in contact or get a message or story out to the national movement. And we love sharing local stories on our national channels. It's really the essence of what Woodcraft folk are about, is our local groups. So even if it's something that you think is quite a routine thing for your local group, like a session that you run every year or something around a particular theme or an occasion day, just send it to me. Like, I'm desperate for local group content. I love hearing about what you're up to, whether it's to share on Instagram or socials or the e-newsletter, whether it's an craft activity that you've done, whether you've hosted a stall at a local event or something, please share it with me. I know I'm sounding desperate, but it's because I am desperate for local group content. I love it. And you can share that via my email address, which I'll share with you at the end, or we've got like an online news form that you can submit stuff for as well. And it's also worth noting, if you share your news with me, such as that you're looking to recruit or anything, we actually run local group recruitment campaigns on a national level for our local groups. And we'll be trialing volunteer recruitment drop-in sessions from February as well. So there's a lot that we can offer at a national level, but unless we know that you're kind of in a need for something, then we kind of can't help you. So these are some of the handy resources that I spoke about. Now, this presentation, I'll share it on YouTube. So don't worry, on our YouTube channel. So don't worry if you don't get a chance to copy this down. But basically, a lot of what I spoke about on the webinar today, you can find on the web address, it's listed there. So that's, for example, downloading a copy of our brand guidelines document. That's links to where you can find our logo files, links to how to access poster and leaflet templates, how you can gain access to our Canva account. All of that you can find on that website. And it's worth noting that on there are links to forms where you could submit news requests to head office. So that's if you want to share news with us. There's forms on there to where you can submit volunteering opportunities. And when we have those, we can put them on our website and share them on our national channels as well. And there's also a link on there to a form where we obviously have print ready poster and social media graphics for you to use when you want to recruit young members and volunteers, but obviously they're not localized in any way to your group, they're just quite general. So we have those, and we also have templates on Canva that we can share a login with you. If you just email me, I can add you to the platform. And you can actually access those and edit them. But if you're not feeling comfortable with using the platform yourself and you want to have a tailored graphic, there's a form on the web address there that you can find where you can send me all the information that you're trying that you want to put together to recruit a volunteer or young member, and I can create the publicity material for you. I can also get it printed for you, and I just invoice your local group and I'll find the best deal for the printing and get them sent to you. So there's a lot that we offer, and also on the resource page there you can find copies of this webinar that I've done today, and also just general publicity tips that I've spoke about today. So that's a really useful web page resource where you'll kind of find everything in one place that I've spoke about today. And I'm just going to kind of finish off with some useful tips for young member and volunteer recruitment. So I mentioned it national that we run local group recruitment campaigns for young members. And we've done about 3 or 4 now, and we usually do them twice a year. This year we'll be doing one that will go live around in March time. And they usually focus around, I'll share some social media posts in your local area as a paid post. Head office cover the cost for that paid post for you. And we'll schedule those to go out in your local community as a paid advert. And we get the kind of hook line that we get people in is that we ask you to host a taster session, which we just get you to run as your usually weekly session. And the advert that we send out basically encourages young people, whichever age you're trying to recruit, to come along to this taster session. And we get them to sign up to that taster session for a form, which is linked in the advert that we put out. And from people that sign up to the form, they'll get an automated email once they sign up, which details information about the open day. You don't have to do anything your end. And we also send a reminder about the open day for you as well. The only thing that you have to do is come up with some activities for your open day and host it. And then after the open day, it's your job to kind of email the people that came and encourage them to join your group. But we run a recruitment campaign for young members. So we'll be doing one in March, and the other one we do will be in September. To find out more about that, I will be emailing, sending out a volunteer to all volunteers that have an email account. And I'll also be posting about it in the Facebook groups on our Facebook account as well. So you're welcome to take part on that. But if you're wanting to do recruitment yourselves, I suggest, as mentioned, that you can use Woodcraft publicity materials, which are ready to print and go, but obviously they're not localized, but you can localize them by attaching some copy to obviously a social media template that we've got for you, or you can fill in the gaps and write over a poster template that we've got and put that up and print it. But we do, I say, have some Canva templates, so I can give you a login to that if you share your email with me, and you can log into Canva, and there's a load of templates now. You can just drag and drop photos in there, and you can fill in the gaps about where and when your group meets. And as I mentioned, we've got a design service at the web page that I displayed earlier. You can find the form to it on there, and you literally fill in the form with all the information of like the either volunteer or young member recruitment that you're looking for, and I can create the publicity for you and share it back to you so you can share it on your local channels, or I can share it for you on the national channels, and I can get it printed for you if it's printed material as well. Once you've got your publicity material, like a social media post, I suggest that you share that with your local Facebook community groups. And if it's a poster, I suggest that you put it up on like notice boards in the local community. You could get a local school to put it up, other kind of local organizations or businesses. Make sure that you've got a clear call to action. I advise this if it's for young member and volunteer recruitment, that maybe like we're running on the national level campaign for local groups, is to kind of do a taster session. I just feel like it kind of gives people a bit of a focus to kind of get in touch with you, and maybe makes them feel a bit less apprehensive about coming if there's going to be a few new people at a session. And like I say, you can just run that as your usually weekly group session, but maybe make the activity just around like who Woodcraft are or is, and you know what we kind of get up to for people, because remember that they'll be new for Woodcraft as well. As I mentioned, you can ask head office, even if you've created all the content yourself to post for recruitment, you can send it to me and I'll promote it. Or as I said, I can create content for you and promote it on our socials, e-newsletters, and on our website. You can share the opportunity with your local press as well, or local volunteering kind of or job sites you can send it to. And you can also reach out to other kind of local youth groups, schools, colleges, universities, specifically for, you know, volunteer recruitment, and also advertise on local job sites as well. So I hope that helps. That's kind of everything in terms of kind of giving an introductory overview to communications with looking at publicity, branding, and recruitment. And I'm going to stop recording now and open the floor to any questions. And if you want any further advice, there's my email address. And just a reminder that a copy of this presentation and webinar will be on Woodcraft YouTube channels. And yeah, if you just link to the web page it's in it, you can find out all the information and links to the different resources and forms that I've mentioned on that page as well. And thanks for listening. Okay, how